On February 18th, 2010, Andrew Joseph Stack III flew his single-engine Piper Dakota light aircraft into an IRS building in Austin, Texas, killing himself, one other person, and injuring 13 others. We're back, and we're starting dark again. When thinking about what it means to be powerless in late capitalism, like really what that feeling does to people, I don't think it's irrelevant to zero in on these extreme cases. He does, though. What? They can be the most telling. Stack wrote a manifesto, and you can read it. It has a lot to do with taxes. He outlines his own history with activism against various forms of taxation. He wasn't a libertarian. He had plenty to say about big business, and he ends his manifesto referencing Marx's critique of the Gotha program, writing, "The Communist Creed, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. The Capitalist Creed, from each according to his gullibility, to each according to his greed." The manifesto does, however, go over a personal history of Stack getting by taxes. According to Stack, on multiple occasions he had his entire livelihood taken from him by the tax system. And I'll say this, on tax day a year ago, the government took $1,000 from me and then just gave it to Israel so that they could drop bombs on Gaza. And that was infuriating. But at the same time, Stack tells his own history of poverty, and here really I think is the kicker. He talks about how in the 80s as a student, he lived in the same apartment complex as an elderly woman he would share strategies with coping with poverty. And he writes, one day, quote, "She, in her grandmotherly fashion, tried to convince me that I would be healthier eating cat food like her rather than trying to get all my substance from peanut butter and bread." Now, when widespread poverty and economic deterioration meets the feeling of political alienation, what results is the type of dejection and desperation that leads to something like Stack's attack on the IRS building. I mean, after all, following the bank crisis in 2011, the number of Americans living in poverty reached 46 million, a number that hadn't been reached since 1959. And then further, in 2014, after studying 1,779 policy issues, Princeton researchers Martin Gillens and Benjamin Page concluded, quote, "In the United States, the majority does not rule. When a majority of citizens disagrees with economic elites or with organized interests, they generally lose." Stack's act of radical desperation is an extreme manifestation of late capitalist dejection that most people have felt some sense of in their lifetime. And I think that's pivotal to understanding the nature of hopelessness that's felt today. There's no way to measure dejection, but it's not irrelevant that 90 million people didn't vote on election day in November. More than those who voted for Trump. In fact, in every presidential election Trump has been in, more people have not voted than voted for him. Now, why might this happen? Well, in 2022, inflation hit a 41-year record high, while in 2024, the top 1% of the nation's income earners came to hold a third of the nation's wealth. Now, Kamala Harris was off to a bad start already on these two issues, being anointed by the Democratic Party and not earning a single vote, and being second in command to the Biden administration, who no one fucking liked. However, at the very beginning of her campaign, she did lean into some of that economic populism, picking Tim Walz as her running mate and calling out price gouging.
I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
However, according to analysis done by Jacobin magazine, the Harris campaign pivoted away from the economy starting around mid-September, de-emphasizing policies that she had previously advocated and moving away from an adversarial stance towards elites. This parallels investigative reporting, which finds that the last weeks of the campaign were increasingly directed by the same corporate interests that she abstained from criticizing. This study, linked below, ends by referencing polling that Jacobin did with the Center for Working Class Politics in Pennsylvania that found voters were more favorable to Harris when they were shown sound bites that centered economic populism as compared to sound bites that centered Trump as a threat to democracy. Interestingly, the IMEU Policy Project and YouGov produced the findings of a poll they conducted in January that revealed similarly 68% of voters who voted for Biden but didn't vote for Kamala Harris in 2024 supported banning super PACs from spending unlimited money, while 60% of them said they would have supported a Democrat who rejected super PAC money. This poll also found that 36% of those voters would have been more likely to vote for Harris had she pledged an arms embargo on Israel, while 29% said the most important reason they didn't vote for Harris was over, quote, ending Israel's violence in Gaza. Now, information about why people didn't vote is more sparse, but Tufts University found only about 42% of young people cast ballots. And this isn't a perfect science, but back in April 2024, Pew found a third of young people, represented disproportionately out of the whole, said their sympathies lie entirely or mostly with the Palestinian people. What's clear is Gaza was a major factor in this election. Now, Gaza is an issue that's uniquely prone to induce the feeling of powerlessness among activists who care about it, a lot of whom spent many months protesting the Biden administration, receiving nothing but pushback, not just from Biden, but from the media, from police, from schools. And after months of activists, largely young people, witnessing these terrible events played over and over again over social media, on our phones, there have been 4 completed or attempted self-immolations conducted as extreme acts of protest over the U.S.'s support for the genocide. Most famously, 25-year-old serviceman Aaron Bushnell of the United States Air Force set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., while live streaming it on Twitch after saying he would, quote, no longer be complicit in genocide. When we look at cases like Bushnell's or Stack's, it's easier to shake your head at a system that failed these individuals. But here's the thing. The system didn't fail anyone. This is what the system is designed to do. Our entire political economy is organized in such a way that dejection is an inevitable outcome. But it's not just that. Dejection is an asset to how the system functions broadly. And if this weren't the case, this long-standing condition of late capitalism would have been addressed by now. So that's what we're going to look at in the next video. And maybe it'll be more upbeat. So like, comment, and subscribe so that publishers will look twice at my book and I don't feel late capitalist dejection.